What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the Galaxy S22 versus the S10. This is a pretty good comparison because there's a lot of things about the S10 that I actually prefer over the S22, but the S22 does have some really great upgrades that you guys need to consider, even if you're going to upgrade, maybe next year or the year after. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with the price. S22 coming in at 400 bucks, really going for like 600 brand new. S10 is going for around 200 bucks, if not a little cheaper now. So these phones are just awesome in price for anybody that's looking for a high quality flagship phone. I'll have those links down below. Let's talk about the hardware on these two phones here. And of course you get the more, slightly updated design on the S22. It kind of looks like the S21 Ultra here. S10 still looks really good and still feels good in the hand. They're both glass and metal phones. The S22, I do like that you have sort of like that matte finish where you can't really see fingerprints like that. And you will notice a big hardware difference here. So with the S10, we actually do retain the headphone jack. There's no headphone jack on the S22, and there's also no SD card support on the S22 as well. They both have stereo speakers, which we will get into, and the S10 is actually a little bit taller than the S22, but the S22 is actually thicker, as you guys can see right there. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the displays here. So with the S22, it has a 6.1 inch display. It is a dynamic AMOLED. It has 120 Hertz, and then you have the punch hole in the middle. It's a completely flat display. It's also 1080p as well, 425 for the PPI. It has HDR10 Plus at 1300 nits peak brightness. The S10 is also a 6.1 inch display. It's dynamic AMOLED, but it does lack the 120 Hertz refresh rate, and it's also HDR10 Plus. But this one has a 1440p resolution versus the 1080p resolution on the S22. And it also has a much higher PPI at 550 as well. So you do have a slightly sharper display, especially when you load up 2K content on the S10. It will have a sharper look to it. Also, one thing you'll notice is the curve versus the flat display. That's really a personal preference. And also the punch hole is bigger on the S10 as well, so you get a smaller punch hole. As far as the display quality goes, they both look awesome. Yes, the S22 is going to be a little bit brighter outdoors, but honestly the sharpness on the S10 is just awesome, especially for this size display to have such a high resolution. It does just look awesome. So really you're choosing between a 2K display versus the 1080p 120 Hertz display. It really comes down to that. So the S10 still has a top-notch display, so I wouldn't even say you're getting a major upgrade in this category unless you really like the 120 Hertz panel. If you don't care about 120 Hertz, your display experience is virtually going to be the same, if not a little bit better on the S10. Now let's go talk about the specs here. So we are running Android 12 on both of these devices, and the thing you need to know about the software is that Android 12 is the last major OS update for the S10. It'll get about 3 years of security patches. The S22, it'll get around 4 years of major OS updates and 5 years of security patches. So you have a really long lifespan on the S22. That's also something for you to think about. As far as the software experience goes, literally there's nothing different. So Samsung desktop support is here, Dolby Atmos is here. They both have NFC, they both have reverse wireless charging. Literally everything on the S22 is still on the S10 as far as the software experience goes. Now, what about the speed on both of these phones here? So I'm gonna go ahead and show you guys the Geekbench scores, and we can go ahead and talk about the specs a little bit here. All right, so the S10 has the Snapdragon 855. This version has 8 gigs of RAM, and then we have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chip on here, and we also have 8 gigs of RAM on the S22 here. So you can see you get much higher Geekbench scores. Now, how does that translate to your everyday use? It really doesn't. You really can't really tell the difference between these two phones as far as speed goes. So just to show you, they will be sort of on par with each other. The S22 will be a little bit faster, but for the general user, you're not really going to notice that second difference and stuff like that. Now, when it comes to like launching a whole bunch of applications and stuff like that, like will the S10 start to lag and stuff like that? That's what a lot of people want to know. Like, will my phone still be speedy when I'm opening up a ton of stuff? Yes, the S10 is actually still a very fast phone. Even when you're launching a ton of applications, it doesn't really lag. You don't really see animation stutters and stuff like that. You guys can see virtually the same. The only difference you see is that the S22 has 120 hertz, which makes it feel like it's buttery smooth. But the S10 is still smooth for the 60 hertz panel. Now, what about the gaming experience on both of these phones? Like I said, virtually going to be the same if you're a casual user. So like for instance, PUBG plays at HDR Extreme on both of these phones. Call of Duty Mobile plays great. Fortnite even plays great. I have a full gaming test for the S10 if you guys want to check that out. Basically, they're going to do great. When it comes to games like Genshin Impact that require a lot of power, yes, the S22, if you're a hardcore gamer, you're going to want that extra juice for sure. But if you're somebody that just casually games, you definitely are not going to need to upgrade here because the S10 still does an excellent job. You would only upgrade if you are somebody that plays games and you play them a lot and you play powerful games, right? That are going to need that extra CPU and GPU power. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about some of the additional features here. We do have a fingerprint scanner on both of these phones as well. As you can see, you have the S10 has more at the bottom, and then the S22 kind of has it sort of up a little higher, as you guys can see there. They both pretty much feel the same, so they don't feel, one doesn't feel faster than the other. They both have face unlock as well too. Alright, so you do have stereo speakers on both of these phones as well, which is really nice. And let's go ahead and hear those speaker quality. Let's go ahead and max the volume out, starting with the S22. Yeah, so the S10 is actually a little bit louder and it has just a little bit more bass to it, for sure. Yeah, you just kind of lack that bass with the S22. So, you know, the S10 does have the slightly better speaker here, so definitely take that in consideration. It's not by much, but it definitely is a little bit better for sure. Also, like I said, S10, you have SD card support and the headphone jack as well, so you will be losing that with the S22. Alright, so this is where I think you're getting a pretty solid upgrade, is in the camera department here. So the S22, you do have a much bigger sensor. It is a 50 megapixel sensor, and it is a 10 megapixel telephoto lens. It does 3x optical zoom. It does 12 megapixel ultra wide. It does 8K at 24, and then you have a 10 megapixel selfie cam that also shoots in 4K 60. The S10 is no slouch at all either. It still takes some pretty good shots. I'll show you guys these side-by-side stills. And this one has a 12 megapixel standard, a 12 megapixel 2x optical zoom, and then a 16 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 4K 60, and then also a 10 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K 60 as well. So I'll show you guys these side-by-side shots, and you guys can sort of you know, make a judgment for yourself. Do you guys think the image quality is good enough to make the upgrade? The S22, 3x. .6. S10. 2x.
3.5.
All right, guys, I want to talk about the battery life. So this may or may not surprise you, but from my experience using both these phones, it's really not that big of a battery difference. They're both actually averaging around 6 hours of screen on time. So the S22 has a 3,700 milliamp battery, 25-watt charging. It also has wireless charging, reverse wireless charging, and then the S10 has a 3,400 milliamp battery, 15-watt charging. This does charge faster, and you will notice that. Also, it does have wireless charging, reverse wireless charging as well with the S10. Basically the same battery life. This one just charges faster. Honestly, I didn't notice any difference. I do think the S22 has better standby time though, for sure. But when it comes to screen on time, definitely the same. So should you upgrade? It really depends on what you care about the most. So if you're into cameras, right? I thought the cameras were pretty good on the S22. Nighttime photography is much better as well than the S10. And then you have a 120 hertz display. I don't think the 8 Gen 1 chip is going to be a big deal for most of you guys because you guys probably aren't hardcore gamers. With the S10, like I said, you lose the SD card support, you lose the headphone jack. Yeah, you lose those things, but with the S22 you do get that software support, so that's also something to think about. As far as size, you're not losing out on a comfortable size. They're both the same size. You are going to lose the 1440p panel. So yeah, so the pros and cons are, it's kind of all over the place. It just kind of depends on what you like. But if I was you guys, I would say upgrade maybe in the next year or two. I think it'll be a good upgrade because this will be much cheaper. But for right now, I don't think it's definitely worth it since they both run the same software right now. Like I said, maybe in a year or two, it'll be worth it. That's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Let me know and I'll catch you guys in the next one.